Hi kids, glad you could join me again today. Last week was Easter Sunday and we had the story about Jesus' resurrection. And so now we're going to pick up today with the story of some of his disciples, some of his followers, and how they found out that Jesus had risen. So we're going to pick up with a man named Cleopas and someone else, possibly his wife, that he was traveling with. And they were leaving Jerusalem, and they were heading up to a town about 7 miles away, and probably going home. And they were talking as they traveled. They were talking about all the events that had happened. They were really sad and confused. They didn't know what had happened, what to believe, what was the truth. They had watched Jesus die. That they knew. They had seen him die. They had seen his body bloody and torn, and they had seen the tomb that he was laid in. But there were all these reports that some of the women had seen an angel that told them that Jesus had risen. And then Peter and John had ran to the tomb, and the tomb was empty, but they hadn't seen Jesus. And they just couldn't believe how Jesus could rise from the dead. They were so confused and so sad. And so as they walked, they talked about these things. And a stranger came up and joined them. Let me get my pictures settled here. A stranger came up and joined them as they walked along. And he said, "What were you talking about as you were walking along that makes you look so sad?" And they said, "Well, you must be the only one around these parts that hasn't heard about what happened. That we're talking about the terrible things that happened to Jerusalem this weekend." And the man said, "What things?" And they said, "It was about Jesus of Nazareth, a great prophet who worked many miracles and preached good things, and he was well regarded by all of the people, and we thought that he was going to be the Messiah that would conquer the Romans and set our nation free. But it must not have been the case, because our chief priests and religious rulers handed him over to the Romans and had him crucified. And that was 3 days ago. But now some of the people have said they've seen an angel that said that he rose from the dead, but others haven't seen it, and we just don't know what to believe. We are so confused." And the man said, "Don't you know that the scriptures say that all of these things must happen to the Messiah in order for him to do God's will?" And so he began explaining to them and opening up the scriptures, explaining to them about how the prophets and the Psalms all taught that the Messiah must suffer and die and rise again in order to fulfill God's plan. And they were just amazed as they listened to what this stranger said. They felt something within them just warming to his words. And they wanted to hear more. And so when they reached the town where they were going, they said, "Well, please come and stay with us. It's getting late. We don't want you to continue on into the dark. So come and stay with us, and we can eat together, and we can continue to talk." So he stopped, and he shared a meal with them, and they asked him to give the blessing over the meal. And so he thanked God for the food, and then he broke the bread. And as he did that, their eyes were opened, and they realized this was Jesus himself. Jesus himself was there eating with them. He was the one who had explained the scriptures to them. And just as they recognized him, he disappeared. Just like that, he disappeared. And they said, "Were not our hearts strangely warmed as we were walking with him, and he was opening the scriptures to us?" And so they wasted no time then in hurrying back to Jerusalem, back those 7 miles, to tell the other disciples that they had seen Jesus. They hurried back and ran up the steps to the upper room where the disciples were, panting and out of breath. And the disciples met them, and they were excited too. They said, "Peter has seen Jesus." And these two said, "We have too. He walked with us and talked and shared the scriptures. He opened the scriptures to us. We've seen him. He is truly alive. And the disciples all went into an inner room and they talked together and locked the doors because they were scared of the religious leaders. They were afraid that they would come hunting them next. So as they talked, suddenly Jesus appeared in their midst. He came right through the locked door. And they all were scared. They were astonished. They thought they were seeing a ghost. They didn't know what to believe. But Jesus said, "Don't be afraid. Look at my hands and my feet. I'm not a ghost. I'm real." He said, "Do you have any food here?" And so they went and they got him some broiled fish that they had and gave it to him, and he ate it. And they knew a ghost wouldn't eat. So they knew that he had to be real. And he told them the same thing he had told the other two on the road. He opened the scriptures to them, gave them a wonderful Bible study, and he explained, "Don't you know that the Messiah had to suffer and had to die in order for everything to come to pass that God has planned? It's right there in the scriptures." And so they got a wonderful Bible study from Jesus, but Thomas had missed that. He was not there that day. And so Thomas said, when the others told him what had happened, he said, "I will never believe that Jesus has risen again unless I put my fingers into the nail prints in his hands and put my hand in the spear wound in his side. I will not believe it otherwise, because I saw him die and I know that can't be the case." But as they were all gathered together one day and Thomas was there, Jesus appeared to them again. And Thomas's eyes just widened. And he no longer needed to touch Jesus' wounds. He knew it. He knew that the others had been right. Jesus really was alive. Jesus looked at him and he said, "Thomas, put your hands in my nail prints and your hand in my side." But Thomas just fell before him and he said, "My Lord and my God." He no longer needed to touch the wounds, but he was declaring that Jesus was not just a prophet, not just a great man who had died, but he was his Lord and his God. Not just a Lord, he was Thomas's Lord and his God. And so he was making him Lord of his life. And that is what each one of us must do. So the disciples continued to talk with Jesus, and he opened the scriptures to them, and they walked with him, and we're going to find out what happened later next week. But Jesus ended this particular conversation with Thomas by saying, you have seen and believed, but blessed are those who have not seen and yet believed." And so that means you and me. We have the Bible to tell us all of these things that happened. And it tells us that Jesus died and that he rose again and that he's coming back for us. And so we haven't physically seen Jesus with our eyes like they did. And we don't even have the option of putting our fingers into his nail prints. But we still believe. We haven't seen him, but we believe. And Jesus says that we are blessed. And so I am so glad that we have the Word of God and that he makes that truth known to us and that we are considered blessed. And we have the hope of seeing Jesus one day soon. He's coming back for us. If you are his child, he's coming back and we're going to meet him and we will see him then. And so if you believe that, you are blessed. If you don't believe, you can. Believe on Jesus today. You guys have a great day. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you again. Take care. Bye.